LinkedIn is a great place to create thought leadership and to position yourself in the topic that you're going into as a thought leader. So great ways to do this is to take the podcast episode that you might have and repurpose it into an article, or there's many other ways that you can use LinkedIn, but most importantly, it shouldn't be a promotional channel.
You are listening now, Female Entrepreneur and Me, the episode 63.
Irene Yu is your podcast host. She is the founder of Female Entrepreneur and Me, an online community that brings together mighty female entrepreneurs. If you are a content creator, provide a service online, are a coach or consultant, then this podcast is about you. We talk about mindsets, strategies, tactics, and share our stories.
Welcome back to Female Entrepreneur and Me. Today is another English episode. This episode, we are so honored to have GrowGetters, founded by Tiffany, Hart and Tanya, Garma. So a little bit of introduction of GrowGetters. GrowGetters is a future skill platform that exists to make sure your career or business is future ready. If you are multi-passionate and ambitious human dreaming of crushing it in your career or building a purpose-led, passionate empire, then you are in the right place. Before we jumpstart our newest episode, one more piece of news. This year, I would like to double down on my English content. If you like our English episode or you can only understand English, great news for you. You will have English episode twice a month. Now, let's dive in today's episode.
Hi, thank you for coming to Female Entrepreneur and Me. I'm Tanya and Tiffany. Could you please introduce yourself to our listener?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you so much for inviting us. It's a real pleasure to be on the podcast and to be with you today. A bit about me, and then I'll hand it over to my podwife, my co-host of the GrowGetters podcast, Tanya Garma. My background is I'm an Australian, so as Tanya, I started my life out as a dancer and a dancer turned business chick, I would say. That's my business trajectory, what happened with me. I loved performance, I loved creativity, and I used that. I used to express myself through dance and through music, but then I realized that I really wanted to do more. I wanted to explore more, and I wanted to use my brain more. So I really went into the business direction. I started my career in New York and London, and then I moved back to Australia and studied in Canberra, and I did a marketing degree in Canberra, or marketing media degree in Canberra, and I really got into innovation when I was studying, and I saw how amazing was it that you could bring this creativity, this things that we used to express through performance, but I could bring it into something really practical and tangible, something that people would use. So innovation got me really excited, and there were a whole bunch of different startup weekends and a whole bunch of different innovation competitions. I got excited to explore creating things in app form and it was basically in a Android and iOS app form and also in tablet form. So I moved really far away from dance and I got into software, and that was exciting, and I could explore using different kind of software user experiences, and I worked for a big company that was producing different software apps for private and public firms, companies, organizations. And through this, I really learned to create something and bring it to market very quickly. I created a startup when I was 24. That startup took me to Amsterdam 3 weeks later. I raised €250,000 within 6 weeks from the first PayPal investor, Peter Davidson, and I quickly got a group of different investors together to fund the business. And the startup was called Seven Write, and it was all about empowering you to write your book and publish online with a single click. And from that, a lot of things opened up, and the whole world of startups and the whole world of funding and starting capital to venture capital, I really learned a lot working in Europe and working in Amsterdam with a whole bunch of investors. And through this experience, I learned really what it was like to run a business and to have a team and to be a founder. And this brought me to really refine how we basically, create our businesses and create products. And so my journey has come from dancer to business chick And along the way, I have learnt how to bring an idea to life and execute it in that way, in a tangible way, in a long-winded way of explaining it.
Okay, so how about Tanya? What's your story?
Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you again for having us on the podcast. This is super exciting. So, like Tiffany said, I am Tanya Garma and I am another Australian here, and we are both living here in Munich, Germany. And my background has been, well, it started in digital advertising actually. So I was studying marketing in Melbourne, Australia. And as part of my degree, which was really cool, you had to do 1 year of work experience in your professional field. So a lot of people, or most of my classmates, went into marketing departments of companies like Ford or Holden, so automotive companies, other companies like Mattel or fashion brands. And I ended up doing my 1 year experience in a digital advertising agency, which back in 2003 was really booming. Digital advertising was a new thing. People were wondering about it. Marketers were starting to throw money into digital advertising and digital marketing. And I ended up staying at this agency beyond my graduation for the next few years. And when I moved to London in my mid-20s, it was almost the perfect time because I was known with a lot of many other Australians as, oh, you guys know digital. You guys are really good at digital. So I worked in London at a very, very prestigious advertising agency, but a very old school advertising agency. And as part of this new crop or this new wave of really savvy digital people. And so I stayed there for a while and then I moved to Sydney and I pivoted slightly and started working in strategy. So still working within an agency environment, but really working solely in strategy, strategic thinking, doing a lot of customer research, and also still working in the digital field. And I worked on brands like National Australia Bank and Melbourne Cricket Ground, the MCG, which maybe you've heard about, maybe not. It's like a very, very special place, especially for Melburnians. And I worked back in the digital field and also in innovation. So really started to cut my teeth in design thinking and bringing digital products to life, similar to Tiffany's journey in that sense. And now have found myself in Germany, which we'll probably talk about next on how Tiffany and I have landed in Germany.
Okay, cool. So you two met in Munich in Germany, or you already knew each other before?
We actually met in a random coffee shop in Munich. I have never been to that area of Munich. I wasn't really often there. I don't live in that area. And I went there to get a really great cup of coffee because I saw it was one of the best coffee places in Munich from some app. And yeah, and so I met Tanya, and I could hear Tanya ordering a coffee in German, but with her very thick Australian accent. And I recognized that she was from Australia, and I quickly jumped on her and said, "Hi, you're from Australia," and we had this really nice conversation. So we met literally at a random coffee shop. We didn't know each other beforehand, and our friendship really grew from that point. We found a lot of common ground. We were really inspired by each other, and it was through friendship and things that we had in common that we continued the connection. And Tanya is working for a really cool company here in Munich called 1913 and working as the strategy and content director for this company. And there was an opening in the company for a role which is called the Director of Digital Transformation. And my skill set, my background really fit that position. And Tanya quickly introduced me to her boss, Virginie Briand. And yeah, from that moment, we started working together. Do you want to continue the story, Tanya?
And I can. Yeah, so it was very random how we met. And, you don't often hear so many Australian voices in Munich, by the way. I think it's a bit different in Berlin. There's definitely a lot more Australians there. So, and the first thing I thought when we really started to get into what our backgrounds were and we were getting to know each other was, I thought, wow, we really have super complementary skill sets. And it wasn't until we started working together at 1913, where we're currently working, we also realized, wow, we actually work really well together. We have very similar values. We have very similar ways of working. Not only are our cultural backgrounds similar, obviously coming from Australia, we have a pretty similar sense of humor and general personality disposition, but we really worked well together. And so I think we started really considering, hey, let's do something. Let's do something on the side. Let's start something up. And I had already been an avid podcast listener, probably since really 2017, like really heavily into podcasts. And I had on my own attempted to start a couple of podcasts and floated a few ideas around. But it wasn't until Tiffany and I really thought, let's do something together that combines both of our skill sets, that we founded the GrowGetters podcast and we founded GrowGetters. We went through a whole process in bringing the podcast to life. You know, originally we had a number of ideas on the table. We really wanted to start something that was based on not only our skills and what we could offer people and how we could actually give them value, but also what we were personally passionate about. And so we knew that there was a gap in the market for this kind of content, especially for women and younger people, so millennials. Some these topics that might be a little bit dry, some of them are very tech driven, some of them are very future focused, and we knew we wanted to deliver it to mainly women, but also just young people, millennials and Gen Zs, in a very bite-sized, digestible and fun way. And so that is how GrowGetters was born.
Okay. Right now, we want to talk a little bit more about how did you grow this podcast to be a top 20 in Korea category, like in a lot of the countries in Europe and also New Zealand and Australia. So when you started a podcast, where did you choose to focus in terms of country, in terms of like the topic, in terms of like how did you choose where to focus to grow your podcast in the first place?
In terms of the topics, we and probably also our initial growth, we naturally went for the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest wins. And so on the content side, we put out content that we were experts in. So things that we were already delivering to our clients, things that we had done a lot of research in already, things that we had practiced and implemented in real life already. So that was the quickest wins for us on the content side. And initially on the launch and growth side at the beginning, we naturally went to our own professional networks first. So tapping in on our own social networks to people that we'd already known. And I think Tiffany and I on Instagram had about a combined maybe 1,200 people, on LinkedIn a lot more, with our combined networks together. So this was the very, very first thing that we did when we launched our podcast.
So in terms of the country-wise, I talked to Tiff last time, and she said because you two are from Australia, so that's why you two folks there first.
Yeah, we had already an existing group of friends and family and business colleagues in Australia. Of course, we do have a network here in Europe, but we thought, like, what's the lowest hanging fruit? And it would be to go to Australia, New Zealand. And really, the first initial strategy, which is what Tanya mentioned, was we really tapped into our friends and family. It's always your first network that you go to. Even when you create a startup, it's called the FFF, friends, family, and fools. They're the ones that you go to immediately, and then you go to the wider circles as you move and you grow. So yeah, the friends and family were really our first network that we tapped into, people that we knew that would be engaged and supportive to kind of kick us off and say, good, you're going great, guys, keep going. You gave us a nice kind of kickstart. But as we went, we've paid nothing for any advertising so far. I think we've paid up to maybe €100, and that was literally just for our branding, for logo development and stuff to do with our branding. But literally we've done everything on our own and from our own skills. And so we thought, okay, let's target into Australia. And we were inspired by lots of different speakers and lots of different people in the Australian market. So we'll go to Australia first and see what happens. We really had no idea what would happen. A lot of the strategies that we used were really, geo-targeting, putting our posts in Melbourne, specifically Melbourne, Australia, sometimes Sydney, sometimes Brisbane, but really targeting in on Melbourne. And we just chose that would be our base from how we start, because it makes a lot more sense for us to be Australian based. I know we are in Germany, but just to have one place to be grounded in. And so then a lot of our posts were targeting, Australian podcast, hashtag Australian podcast, Melbourne podcast, Sydney podcast. We'd use a lot of this targeting to help us zone in and get to people. And actually it worked quite well. When you look at the stats, 50% of our overall email plus also listens are coming from Australia and all parts of Australia, from Perth all the way across to the eastern coast. So it was quite a good strategy to start off with, really having a base, finding one place. If you are a multilingual, living in different places, you've come from a different background like yourself, finding one place to be grounded in and growing from there really helped us with our positioning. Yes, it confused our audience sometimes because they saw that we were in winter jackets and it was summer. But we had to try and make it clear that we are Australian, based in Munich, but we are creating an Australian podcast to start off with, and we're going to go from there. And lots of stuff changed as we grew.
So I wonder what would make different if you gonna start to focus more on Europe market, because I think in terms of language that would be the same. Probably gonna do only English, but then how about the content wise? Do you have to tailor the difference in between, or actually you will have the same content, but you're just gonna do a marketing a little bit differently?
I wouldn't say we would have to tailor the content very much at all, because we are ranking in places like the Netherlands and Finland and the Czech Republic, all the way to Mexico even. So I think people are resonating with the content. The only thing, and we have talked about it as the next part of our strategy, our growth strategy, the only thing we would change is that we would feature more guests or more expert guests from these markets. So like Tiffany said, another big part of our growth strategy, which has so far been mainly focused in the Southern Hemisphere, has also been featuring prominent influencers from Australia. And I think if we were going to, and our plan is to create a bigger audience in the European continent, I think one of the very first things we would do is to start interviewing influencers from within Europe. So people are not only attracted to our content because of the topics that we cover, but they're also interested in the names, so the people that we're speaking to. Because every week we alternate. 1 week on the podcast, it's an episode from Tiffany and I where we cover a future skills topic. So anything from in the technology space to business space. And then every second week, generally, we talk to an expert who delivers a masterclass on a specific topic. So I think for any podcast, one of the best tips generally is to try and interview influencers that are able to share your podcast onto their own established communities. And if you do want to hone in on a specific market, then it would make sense to talk to influencers who have a strong footprint in that market.
So I suddenly thought about one question, because that's what I was trying to figure it out recently. Is you have different things for your podcast content. Do you think it also makes it more popular? Or does it why did you choose to have a different thing in the first place?
Different themes, you mean?
Yeah, because you have like a future skill set and you have different thing in your podcast content and episode.
It was really for variety, and also like there are a gamut of podcasts that have just interviews. This is definitely a way. There are so many different ways that you can create a podcast. It can be a storytelling podcast where you're telling a story and it's just you talking. It can be you giving tips and tricks and tools, which is kind of more of our future skills style podcast. It can be really an interview style podcast, which is, kind of touching into the masterclass. But we really wanted to have a variety of different things that we're offering our audience because there's so much that we can actually tap into. One aspect that we also launched this year, which was our book club, and it was generally born out of Tanya and my love for reading, and we read a lot of different books and a lot of different articles, listen to podcasts, and that's actually one of the core reasons why we started, that we were consuming so much, kind of content junkies, and just consuming so much and just sharing with each other, hey, have you read this? Have you seen this? Have you read that? And every time that we would exchange together, we would learn something new, we would grow. And I was always so excited that Tanya would share something with me, or Tanya vice versa. And that was really a big thing for us, kicking off the podcast. We're learning so much, we're consuming so much, we may as well make it accessible to so many other women that also would like to also share this. We need to find a way that we can share what we know and what we've learned and what we're reading with other people so they also grow, because personal growth is only so small. Your world is so small when you're just focused on yourself, but when you focus on many others, it becomes so much more wider and so much more richer. So that was really a core thing. But to talk about the themes, we have 4 different themes. We just launched our 4th theme only this month, and it's future trends. So we have future skills, masterclasses, which are interviews, our book club series, which happens every month, and then we have future trends. So we interview real revolutionary technologists, people that are really at the forefront of what's happening future-wise, skills-wise, technologically. So we just interviewed Mike Butcher, who is the global editor-at-large for TechCrunch. We have a new person coming up who is a super, super amazing woman, AI specialist, and she's going to be on the podcast in season 3. That's coming up next year. And so we have a whole bunch of future trends, which are really ideas that you probably wouldn't have considered unless you listen to this or you've read something that they've written. But it's just to open up our minds and find new possibilities. So the different themes for us is to really expand our content offering to our audience and not be so insular, with a bit more variety. And it's gone down quite well. One thing that's been interesting for our book club is that we've been able to feature a book, tag the author, which is also giving us more kind of clout, credibility, and also connection to the author. Plus, we also have 1 to 2 people on the book club, so it's an extra 2 more networks that we can share into from that book. So it's also a growth strategy for us.
Because we don't have so much time, so the growth hacking, I will just skip that. So I will just go to the question 6. In my show, there's always one question that I will turn my podcast guests to be a podcast host, because some of them are actually not podcasters, so there's a chance for them to enjoy this experience. And what do you have question? What kind of question do you have for me today?
So our question for you, Irene, today is, how can someone make an international podcast work? Like what are the key ways to make an international podcast work when you are talking to many different people that come from all different walks of life?
Since I just started to have my English podcast like a couple of months ago, and I'm just putting out every 1 episode every month roughly. So I'm still testing out, but I have to say it's kind of hard in the sense that because you can only choose one language in this podcast platform. So I think once you grow, you probably still have to separate that. However, in the beginning, as you said, it's good that you focus just one market. So it's easier that you stand out in that market, and then you can think about going to other market and so on. In terms of like the content, it's just like you too. Like I would just talk about things are relevant to my category, are relevant to, for example, I'm in like entrepreneurship category, so I'm talking a lot about entrepreneurship, and of course also relevant to digital marketing and business strategy, mindset. Those are all relevant to entrepreneurship. In terms of like international experience, I share whatever happened to me here, and I think sometimes that might be interesting for people who would like to actually know more about outside of their own world. But if they are like really not interested in any international experience, I don't think they are my listener, and it probably won't be my target audience either. So you also have to know who are your target audience, and also you're like, if you are like monetize your podcast, your ICA, so that you know you don't have to try to attract everybody, and just to provide immense value for your target audience.
That's very true. We definitely would agree with that. Absolutely.
Definitely. As you said, like really zoning in, really, or honing into your, like, what value. I think one of the biggest things that we're also still learning is that what is the real value that we're giving to our audience? What really is exciting for them? What do they really want to learn? And I think this is when it comes to when you have a podcast, you have a platform, and you have a platform to share your ideas, but you also really have to make sure that those ideas are relevant and interesting for your audience. And that's one of the most important things. The closer you get to your audience, even if it's from an audio perspective, of course you can feel like you're slightly removed, but the closer you get to your audience, the closer you get to know who they are through great surveys using SurveyMonkey or Google Forms or whatever, or even if you're using Instagram, they also have LinkedIn stories. Getting close to your audience, asking them, getting into their DMs. Someone new comes on board and follows you on Instagram, connecting with them and saying, hey, hi, how are you? Thanks for connecting. Just some personal messages. The closer you get to your audience, I really can see that the bonds grow, the loyalty grows, and also their ability to share your podcast onto their friends and family and colleagues, it becomes like a stronger way. So I think the closer you can get to your audience to understand what they want to know, what they want to listen. I see the best podcasts share on Instagram or share on the different platforms. What would you like to listen to in the next episode? And what are the topics or themes? They shout out to their community and they respond back. When the community writes something, they respond back, thank them, and actually execute what their community has asked them to do. So you're basically becoming a vehicle also for your community, to deliver the value that they need. They see you as their source to get the information that they need. So one very, very important thing, I think, just to mention there, is real deep connections with your community. The closer you get with your community, the more you will learn and the better your podcast will be.
Okay, cool. Where do we find you online?
You can find us, well, as a podcast, we are on basically every single podcast platform that you can find, namely Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and even all the other smaller ones like Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're on pretty much all of them. You can also find us directly on our website, growgetterspodcast.com, and you can also listen to the podcast through our website if you want to. But you can also get lots of other information about us, and you can write us an email if you want to give us any feedback or if you have any ideas for topics or guests. We'd love to hear from you. We are on Instagram at GrowGetters Podcast, And we are also on LinkedIn and Twitter. And we are now
Wow.
also on TikTok at GrowGetters. So TikTok is a big growth area that we want to start really delivering more and more video content, more tips, more hacks, more tricks. So really tapping into a younger audience, I guess, but I think a lot of millennials are also using TikTok, to be honest. So yeah, we're really excited to ramp up TikTok in 2021, actually.
So if you want to see us do some dancing, then and some pantomimes, then you can head over to TikTok and you'll see us making a fool of ourselves on TikTok. Just joking. No.
No, we won't. We will not be dancing.
No, of course not.
We really want to actually use our social platforms a little bit differently. So this year we've mainly been using Instagram as a driver to the podcast, but our plan for 2021 is to actually treat every individual platform as a standalone. So, for example, on TikTok, we would be creating bespoke content that suits the platform and suits the TikTok audience. On Instagram, we would disseminate all of our information and research that we use for the podcast into much more visual, bite-size, educational posts and stories and reels. And yeah, so I think my point is that, and this is another good point for any podcaster, is to offer that value on the platforms themselves. Like, why do people use Instagram? It's for inspiration, education, for beauty. So it's about, providing that value as per the platform and to kind of respect the user of each platform as well. So I think we're going to change things up a lot more in 2021, and it's really exciting.
And also going into LinkedIn, also that's another interesting platform. Of course, it's really important not to spread yourself too thin and to find ways to automate content. That's for sure. But as Tanya said, to really look at each platform in what its use is. And with LinkedIn is a great place to create thought leadership and to position yourself in the topic that you're going into as a thought leader. So great ways to do this is to take the podcast episode that you might have and repurpose it into an article, or there's many other ways that you can use LinkedIn. But most importantly, it shouldn't be a promotional channel because LinkedIn will actually penalize you for that. So that's big learnings that we've had ourselves, and we're going to implement that into 2021. So our next season for GrowGetters kicks off on February 3rd. Very excitingly, we have another event also. So one thing that we're doing to grow our European audience is we're hosting these masterclasses, like local masterclasses. And we have a really amazing coach coming on, and she's going to give an event about how to reinvent you. And it's all about using the business model You Canvas, and it's a really fun masterclass to kick off the year. It's starting on January 19th, and I think it's at 10 a.m. But if you'd like to have more information, it'll be on our website. It'll also be all over our socials. But if you want to start the year and really look at who are you, what do you want to do, and create you into a business model, and really reinvent you, then this masterclass is the best way to kick off the year. So that's our starting point for the year.
Okay, cool. Just one more question. So, you already mentioned about your future plan, but how about Tanya? Are you going to also grow together with Tiffany on this podcast, or you will also keep focusing on your current job?
That's a very, very good question. We do plan to continue to be side hustlers. So we're enjoying our current job. We are both lucky enough to work part-time. So we do have some extra capacity to put into GrowGetters to grow the podcast into a business, actually. This is our plan for 2021 and beyond. So the podcast will always continue to kick on every single week. But we do see that there is an opportunity. People are resonating with our content, and I think there really is an opportunity to help educate even more women and young people to make sure they have the skills to future-proof their careers, or if they're founders, their businesses or their side hustles. So watch this space, because we really want to go beyond the podcast actually and start thinking about alternative ways or additional ways where we can actually really arm women with these skills that they need for the future. That is what has driven GrowGetters in the first place. Is we ultimately, our core ambition is to see more women at the decision-making table in business and in leadership. And that's what really fuels us. And that's what GrowGetters, that's how it was actually born. And to do that, we realized, okay, but women need to know these skills. And, from the podcast perspective, all of these topics are out there already, but they're mainly delivered by a couple of white Silicon Valley guys. And I think we want to offer an alternative. So we would love to take GrowGetters even further. And so right now we are in the middle of developing a product. We are testing the product right now with our very small beta audience, a beta group of women, our dream clients, I guess. And so we are really hoping to launch something in the first or second quarter of 2021.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. Can I also join a beta tester?
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
That's the kind of response that we need, Tanya.
Great, then I'll definitely let's talk about that later, that how to join as your beta tester. Thank you for coming to our show today, and so it's time to say goodbye to our listeners. So thanks again.
Thank you so much again. Thanks for inviting us on the podcast.
Thank you too. Bye bye.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
So now I would like to hear from you. What did you learn from this episode? What can you actually implement what you have learned today into your life or business? Not just thinking, but starting to take action. And also don't forget to go over on iTunes and leave us your review. Take a screenshot and share with @FemaleEntrepreneurMe. See you next English episode. Bye!